The Jaguar E-Type is a British sports car, which was manufactured by Jaguar Cars Ltd between 1961 and 1975. Its combination of good looks, high performance and competitive pricing established the marque as an icon of 1960s motoring. More than 70,000 E-Types were sold. In March 2008, the Jaguar E-Type ranked first in the Daily Telegraph online list of the world's 100 most beautiful cars of all time. In 2004, Sports Car International magazine placed the E-Type at number 1 on their list of top sports cars of the 1960s. Overview: the E-Type was initially designed and shown to the public as a rear-wheel drive Grand Tourer and two-seater coupe copyright form and as a two-seater convertible. A 2+2 four-seater version of the coupe copyright, with a lengthened wheelbase, was released several years later. On its release, Enzo Ferrari called it the most beautiful car ever made. Later model updates of the E-Type were officially designated Series 2 and Series 3, and over time the earlier cars have come to be referred to as Series 1, Series 1 or 1/2, and Series 2. Of the Series 1 cars, Jaguar manufactured some limited edition variants, inspired by motor Singer, the lightweight E-Type, which was apparently intended as a sort of follow-up to the D-Type. Jaguar planned to produce 18 units but ultimately only a dozen were reportedly built. Of those, 2 have been converted to low-drag form and 2 others are known to have been wrecked and deemed to be beyond repair, although one has now been rebuilt. These are exceedingly rare and sought after by collectors. The low-drag coupe copyright was a one-off technical exercise which was ultimately sold to a Jaguar racing driver. It is presently believed to be part of the private collection of the current Viscount Cowdray. The New York City Museum of Modern Art recognized the significance of the E-Type's design in 1996 by adding a blue roadster to its permanent design collection, one of only 6 automobiles to receive the distinction. Concept versions: E1A, after the company's success at the Le Mans 24 Hours through the 1950s, Jaguar's defunct racing department was given the brief to use D-Type style construction to build a road-going sports car, replacing the XK-150. The first prototype featured a monocoque design, Jaguar's fully independent rear suspension and the well-proved XK engine. The car was used solely for factory testing and was never formally released to the public. The car was eventually scrapped by the factory. E2A, Jaguar's second E-Type concept was E2A which, unlike the E1A, was constructed from a steel chassis with an aluminium body. This car was completed as a racing car as it was thought by Jaguar at the time it would provide a better testing ground. E2A used a 3-liter version of the XK engine with a Lucas fuel injection system. After retiring from the Le Mans 24 Hours, the car was shipped to America to be used for racing by Jaguar privateer Briggs Cunningham. In 1961, the car returned to Jaguar in England to be used as a test vehicle. Ownership of E2A passed to Roger Woodley, who took possession on the basis the car not be used for racing. E2A had been scheduled to be scrapped. Roger's wife Penny Griffiths owned E2A until 2008 when it was offered for sale at Bonham's Quayle auction. It eventually sold for $4,957,000. Production versions: Series 1. The Series 1 was introduced, initially for export only, in March 1961. The domestic market launch came 4 months later in July 1961. The cars at this time used the triple SU carbureted 3.8-liter 6-cylinder Jaguar XK6 engine from the XK150S. Earlier built cars utilized external bonnet latches which required a tool to open and had a flat floor design. These cars are rare and more valuable. After that, the floors were dished to provide more legroom and the twin bonnet latches moved to inside the car. The 3.8-liter engine was increased to 4.2 liters in October 1964. The 4.2-liter engine produced the same power as the 3.8-liter and same top speed, but increased torque from 240 to 283 lb/ft. Acceleration remained pretty much the same and 0 to 60 mph times were around 7.0 seconds for both engines, but maximum power was now reached at 5,400 rpms instead of 5,500 rpms on the 3.8-liter. That all meant better throttle response for drivers that did not want to shift down gears. Autocar road tested a UK spec E-Type 4.2 fixed-head coupe in May 1965. The maximum speed was 153 mph, the 0–60 mph time was 7.6 seconds and the 1–4 mile from a standing start took 15.1 seconds. They summarized it as in its 4.2 guise the E-Type is a fast car and offers just about the easiest way to travel quickly by road. Motor Magazine road tested a UK spec E-Type 4.2 fixed-head coupe in October 1964. The maximum speed was 150 mph, the 0–60 mph time was 7 seconds and the 1–4 mile time was 14.9 seconds. They summarized it as the new 4.2 supersedes the early 3.8 as the fastest car motor has tested. The absurd ease which 100 miles per hour can be exceeded in a 1–4 mile never failed to astonish. 3,000 miles of testing confirms that this is still one of the world's outstanding cars. All E-Types featured independent coil spring rear suspension with torsion bar front ends, and four-wheel disc brakes, inboard at the rear. All were power-assisted. Jaguar was one of the first vehicle manufacturers to equip cars with disc brakes as standard from the XK-150 in 1958. The Series 1 can be recognized by glass-covered headlights, small mouth opening at the front, signal lights and tail lights above bumpers and exhaust tips under the number plate in the rear. 3.8-liter cars have leather-upholstered bucket seats, an aluminium-trimmed center instrument panel and console, and a Moss 4-speed gearbox that lacks synchromesh for first gear. 4.2-liter cars have more comfortable seats, improved brakes and electrical systems, and an all-synchromesh 4-speed gearbox. 4.2-liter cars also have a badge on the boot proclaiming Jaguar 4.2-liter E-Type. Optional extras included chrome-spoked wheels and a detachable hardtop for the OTS. When leaving the factory the car was originally fitted with Dunlop 6.40 15-inch RS5 tires on 15 5K wire wheels. Later Series 1 cars were fitted with Dunlop 185-15 SP41 or 185 ER15 Pirelli Cinturato as radial ply tires. A 2+2 version of the Coupe copyright was added in 1966. The 2+2 offered the option of an automatic transmission. The body is 9 in longer and the roof angles are different. The Roadster and the non-2+2 FHC remained as two-seaters. Less widely known, right at the end of Series 1 production and prior to the transitional Series 1 1/2 referred to below, a very small number 10 to 20 Series 1 cars were produced, with open headlights in the UK. These Series 1 cars that had their headlights modified by removing the covers and altering the scoops they sit in, the headlights differ in several respects from the production Series 1 1/2, the main being they are shorter at 143 mm from the production Series 1 1/2 at 160 mm. Production dates on these machines vary but in right-hand drive form production has been verified as late as March 1968. The low number of these cars produced make them amongst the rarest of all production E-Types. Following the Series 1 there was a transitional series of cars built in 1967 a Euro 68, unofficially called Series 1 1/2, which are externally similar to Series 1 cars. Due to American pressure the new features were open headlights, different switches, and some tuning for US models. Some Series 1 1/2 cars also have twin cooling fans and adjustable seat backs. Series 2 features were gradually introduced into the Series 1, creating the unofficial Series 1 1/2 cars, but always with the Series 1 body style. A United States federal safety law affecting 1968 model year cars sold in the U.S. was the reason for the lack of headlight covers and change in switch design in the Series 1.5 of 1968. An often overlooked change, one that is often modified back to the older style, is the wheel knockoff nut. U.S. safety law for 1968 models also forbid the winged spinner knockoff, and any 1968 model year sold in the U.S. should have a hexagonal knockoff nut, to be hammered on and off with the assistance of a special socket included with the car from the factory. This hexagonal nut carried on into the later Series 2 and 3. An open 3.8-litre car, actually the first such production car to be completed, was tested by the British magazine The Motor in 1961 and had a top speed of 149.1 mph and could accelerate from 0 to 60 mph in 7.1 seconds. A fuel consumption of 21.3 miles per imperial gallon was recorded. The test car cost £2,097 including taxes. The cars submitted for road test by the popular motoring journals of the time such as The Motor, the Autocar and Autosport magazines were specially prepared by the Jaguar works to give better than standard performance figures. This work entailed engine balancing and subtle work such as gas flowing the cylinder heads and may even have involved fitting larger diameter inlet valves. Both of the well-known 1961 road test cars, the E-Type Coupe Reg. Number 9600 HP and E-Type Convertible Reg No. 77 RW, were fitted with Dunlop racing tyres on test, which had a larger rolling diameter and lower drag coefficient. This goes some way to explaining the 150 mph maximum speeds that were obtained under ideal test conditions. The maximum safe rev limit for standard 6-cylinder 3.8-litre E-Type engines is 5,500 rpms. The later 4.2-litre units had a red marking on the rev counter from just 5,000 rpms. The maximum safe engine speed is therefore 127 mph and 137 mph at the 5,500 rpms limit. Both test cars must have reached or exceeded 6,000 rpms in top gear when on road test in 1961. Production numbers from Robson, 15,493.8s, 17,324.2s, 10,932 plus 2s, production numbers. Series 2, hallmarks of Series 2 cars are open headlights without glass covers, a wraparound rear bumper, repositioned and larger front indicators and tail lights below the bumpers, better cooling aided by an enlarged mouth, and twin electric fans, and uprated brakes. The engine is easily identified visually by the change from smooth polished cam covers to a more industrial ribbed appearance. It was detuned in the US with twin Strombergs and larger valve clearances, but in the UK retained triple S use and the much tighter valve clearances. The interior and dashboard were also redesigned. Rocker switches that met US health and safety regulations were substituted for toggle switches. The dashboard switches also lost their symmetrical layout. A combination steering lock and ignition key was fitted to the steering column, which replaced the dashboard-mounted ignition switch and charismatic push-button starter. A new steering column was fitted with a collapsible section in the event of an accident. New seats were fitted, which purists claim lacked the style of the originals but were certainly more comfortable. Air conditioning and power steering were available as factory options. Production according to Robson is 13,490 of all types. Series 2 production numbers, official delivery numbers by market and year are listed in Porter but no summary totals are given. Series 3, a new 5.3L 12-cylinder Jaguar V12 engine was introduced, with uprated brakes and standard power steering. The short wheelbase FHC body style was discontinued and the V12 was available only as a convertible and 2+2 Coupe copyright. The convertible used the longer wheelbase 2+2 floor plan. The Series 3 is easily identifiable by the large cross-slatted front grille and flared wheel arches, and a badge on the rear that proclaims it to be a V12. Cars for the U.S. market were fitted with large projecting rubber bumper overriders to meet local 5 mph impact regulations, but those on European models were considerably smaller. U.S. models also have side indicator repeats on the front wings. There were also a very limited number of 6-cylinder Series 3 E-types built. These were featured in the initial sales literature. When leaving the factory, the V12 opening 2-seater and V12 Duo plus or minus 2 originally fitted Dunlop E70 VR of 15-inch tires on 15er, 6K wire or solid wheels. Robson lists production at 15,290. Series 3 production numbers. Limited editions, 2 limited production E-type variants were made as test beds. the low-drag coupe and lightweight E-Type, both of which were raced, low-drag coupe copyright. Shortly after the introduction of the E-Type, Jaguar management wanted to investigate the possibility of building a car more in the spirit of the D-Type racer, from which elements of the E-Type styling and design were derived. One car was built to test the concept, designed as a coupe copyright, as its monocoque design could only be made rigid enough for racing by using the stressed skin principle. Previous Jaguar racers were built as open-top cars, because they were based on ladder frame designs with independent chassis and bodies. Unlike the steel production E-Types, the LDC used lightweight aluminium. Malcolm Sayer retained the original tub with lighter outer panels riveted and glued to it. The front steel subframe remained intact, the windshield was given a more pronounced slope, and the rear hatch was welded shut. Rear brake cooling ducts appeared next to the rear windows, and the interior trim was discarded, with only insulation around the transmission tunnel. With the exception of the windscreen, all cockpit glass was perspex. A tuned version of Jaguar's 3.8-litre engine with a wide-angle cylinder head design tested on the D-Type racers was used. Air management became a problem and, though a higher-performing vehicle than its production counterpart, the car was never competitive. The only testbed car was completed in summer of 1962 but was sold a year later to Jaguar racing driver Sledgehammer Prothero. Since then it has passed through the hands of several collectors on both sides of the Atlantic and is now believed to reside in the private collection of the current Viscount Cowdray. Lightweight E-Type, 12 cars plus 2 spare bodies were made by Jaguar. In some ways, this was an evolution of the low-drag coupe copyright. It made extensive use of aluminium alloy in the body panels and other components. However, with at least one exception, it remained an open-top car in the spirit of the D-Type, to which this car is a more direct successor than the production E-Type, which is more of a GT than a sports car. The cars used an aluminium block-tuned version of the production 3.8-litre Jaguar engine with 300 bhp output rather than the 265 bhp produced by the ordinary version. Factory-built lightweights were homologated by Jaguar with 345 DC-03 Weber carburetors in addition to a Lucas mechanical fuel injection system. Early cars were fitted with a close-ratio version of the 4-speed E-Type gearbox, with some later cars being fitted with a ZF 5-speed gearbox. The cars were entered in various races but, unlike the C-Type and D-Type racing cars, they did not win at Le Mans or Sebring but were reasonably successful in private hands and in smaller races. One lightweight was modified into a low-drag coupe copyright, by Malcolm Sayer. Another lightweight was modified into a unique low-drag design, by Dr. Samir Klatt of Imperial College. Along with the factory LDC, this lightweight is now believed to reside in the private collection of the current Viscount Cowdray. Many were fitted with more powerful engines as developments occurred. On May 14, 2014, Jaguar's Heritage Business announced it will be building the 6 remaining lightweights. The original run of lightweights was meant to be 18 vehicles. However, only 12 were built. The new cars, using the unused chassis codes, will be hand-built to the exact same specification as the originals. Availability will be prioritized for established collectors of Jaguars, with a focus on those who have an interest in historic race cars. Motorsport. Bob Jane won the 1963 Australian GT Championship at the wheel of a lightweight E-Type. The Jaguar E-Type was very successful in SCCA production sports car racing, with Group 44 and Bob Tullius taking the B Production Championship with a Series 3 V12 racer in 1975. A few years later, Gran Turismo Jaguar from Cleveland, Ohio campaigned a 4.2-litre 6-cylinder FHC racer in SCCA production series, and in 1981 the national championship in the SCCAC production class, defeating a fully funded factory Nissan Z-Car team with Paul Newman. References, notes. Bibliography. External links, Jaguar E-Type at DMOZ, information on the Jaguar XK-E, online registry with 12,000 plus car records and 89,000 plus photos of the E-Type, barn find Jaguar E-Type to be reborn.